I come here today to speak on behalf of our 120 units, and we speak with one voice as one of the primary architects of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It is with mixed feelings that I appear before this committee in order to present our response to the draft of the Congressional Redistricting Map, which this committee has prepared. I understand that you already have the votes and commitments from your party's colleagues to enact this map, but we place our opposition to this plan on the record, knowing that there must be a judicial and in-court review, and it is not over. We have reviewed this plan and find it to be deficient, regressive, and wrong in many respects. First, you have chosen to prepare a plan which is bold and bodacious in its attempt to stack and pack as many racial minorities in the same districts in an effort to gain a partisan political advantage for future years for the Republican Party. The plan, which has been presented by this committee, violates every generally accepted and recognized redistricting principle as mandated by the United States Supreme Court, Shaw versus Reno, Shaw versus Hunt, and Miller versus Johnson. In Miller versus Johnson, a case which discussed an effort by the Republican-controlled United States Justice Department to create black max congressional districts, the United States Supreme Court condemned the unnatural and contrived stacking and packing of African Americans into separate voting districts in order to maximize the number of Republican congressional districts. That court declared that an intent to establish a racial bias for the creation of a particular district can be proved by showing irregular and unnatural district shapes or by a review of the stated legislative purpose to segregate minority voters into particular districts. In presenting this claim, it can be established that the drawing of the particular lines which you have drawn defy and subordinate every traditional race-neutral district principle. Those principles include, but are not limited to, compactness, contiguity, respect for political subdivisions and communities of shared interest. The proposed map subverts each of these redistricting principles to an illegal consideration of race. What is obvious in your plan is that African Americans have been removed from many districts and packed into the proposed 1st, 4th, and 12th district. The packing and stacking was not required by the 1965 Voting Rights Act, but I guess that the courts will have to determine this issue. For example, the 12th district, which is represented by Congressman Mayor Watts, has been packed with just about every African American who lives around the I-85 corridor from Greensboro to Charlotte. The proposed African American composition of that district has increased from 42 to 50%. This increase of African American presence is due to the bleaching out of African Americans. But what is more also deeply concerning is how we have what we see going on in the eastern part of our state. Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act was adopted in 1965 to outlaw discriminatory voting practices that have been responsible for widespread disenfranchisement of African Americans in North Carolina. 40 of our 100 counties are covered by Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act due to past harm done to minority population. The Rucho-Lewis congressional map disregards this long and painful history for 5 counties covered by Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. In drawing this map, Gates, Washington, Beaufort, Grant, Craven, and Wayne counties were removed from the 1st Congressional District. This district was developed intentionally to overcome years of disenfranchisement and voter exclusion. Removing these counties from District 1 dilutes the voting power of these Section 5 counties to elect a congressman of their choice. We saw this when the ultra-radicals took over the Congress in the early 1900s. From George White to Eva Clayton, 90 years, these Voting Rights Act counties could not elect a person of their choice. Proposed District 1, represented by Congressman G.K. Butterfield, had lost population and had to expand in order to comply with the one person, one vote requirement. This could have been accomplished by expanding the district as far as necessary to meet the population requirement. What you have done is wrong, it's regressive, and it's backwards. And we have seen it before when political parties try to stack the deck for their particular ideology. In this state, African Americans have repeatedly been the victims of racial gerrymandering in order to achieve some political advantage. Thus, we understand what you are doing. And I stand here today to say to you that we voice our objection and our indignation. In the past, our influence in the election of congressional representatives has been muted, As a result of constant challenges to those gerrymandering efforts, our exclusions changed in 1990, two sentences. Today, there are 2 African Americans who represent this state in the United States House of Representatives. This General Assembly is engaged in an unseemly effort to segregate African Americans and submerge our influence into 2 congressional districts, and this being done for the sole purpose of creating 10 districts in which Republicans can elect its members. It is a shameful, wrong, regressive act. It is a perversion of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and we will meet you in court.